friends, if you're like me, you love a good bargain and you also love something that's quick and easy to fix. So as you may know, if you have watched my previous videos, I've been able to find locally pork roast, pork sirloin for 79 cents a pound. You know, I just can't pass it up. I've been canning it. I bought 2 roasts. I'm going to cook one for our dinner, Kalua pork in the Instant Pot. It is the quickest and easiest recipe you've ever tried. It was the first thing I ever learned to cook in the Instant Pot. All you do is you put your pork in there, you put a little bit of salt, whether you've got table salt. I'm going to be using Himalayan pink salt. The traditional Hawaiian salt is called Alea salt. It's got a pinkish color or pinkish reddish color because they use the volcanic dirt and mix it with the salt, but I don't have any Alea salt. I looked on Amazon for it. It's pretty pricey. So if you really want the authentic Hawaiian flavor, you might want to look on Amazon for Alea, A-L-A-E-A salt. And then to give it the smoked flavor, you know, we're not cooking this in a barbecue pit. We're cooking it in our Instant Pot. So I'm using this natural hickory flavor liquid smoke, probably about a tablespoon. And let this Now this first roast, as I said, we're going to cook in the Instant Pot for our dinner. We're going to have delicious pull-apart pork with the nice Kalua flavor. And this second one, I'm going to chunk it up. And then later on this evening, we're going to can this. I'm going to use the raw pack method to can this. And we're going to can it as Kalua pork. And all we need, like I said, all we need is salt and liquid smoke for that. So very simple. You're going to be glad you tried this recipe if you do. Making your own pulled pork at home is so simple and easy and wonderful to have on the shelf. And inexpensive if you can get a good deal like this. Okay, so let's get started. We'll do the Instant Pot recipe first. You know, sometimes I get carried away when I'm cooking and I throw a whole bunch of ingredients in one of my recipes and then I taste it and I think, you know, there's something in there that I don't like, but who in the world could identify what it was? I put so many ingredients in. So that's the beauty of this Kalua pork. The only ingredients are smoke and salt. It's very basic, very delicious, and you can't go wrong. Keep it simple, sweetie, right? Alrighty, our pot says hot, so we're ready to saute. So I am not even going to remove the fat cap from this pork. I'm going to just brown that fatty side first. Okay. We're going to let it brown for about 3 minutes on this side, and then we'll kind of brown all the sides. There's, you know, 3 or 4 turns I can make here to get it brown. All right, our roast is nicely browned on all sides. I'm going to just move it to a plate here. A nice clean plate. And that browning just adds a little bit of flavor. So next, we are going to add our water, about a half a cup of water. That'll help to deglaze the pot. We're going to add a tablespoon of liquid smoke. We're going to deglaze the bottom of the pot. You want to make sure to deglaze because if there are brown bits stuck to the bottom of your Instant Pot, you'll get a burn signal on your on the front of your machine and it won't cook any further. It'll stop. Alrighty, so we've got pretty much the brown bits scraped up. We've added our water and our liquid smoke. We're going to replace the roast in here. And then we're going to simply sprinkle it with 2 teaspoons of salt. And I'm using my pink Himalayan salt. You can use kosher salt, sea salt, whatever salt you prefer. And 2 teaspoons doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. So we are going to cancel saute. We don't want to saute any. We don't want to saute any longer. We just want the machine off. We're going to get the lid. When you hear the little magical music, you know that the lid is on. Now it's in place. Alrighty, so we are going to pressure cook for 1 hour and 30 minutes or 90 minutes, same difference. And after 90 minutes, we will let this naturally release pressure until we're ready to eat. Here's another tip for you. I kind of learned it the hard way. I'm using the Instant Pot Max. The Max is the model which has the canning function, and it's the only Instant Pot you can can with. And it has a higher pressure capability. So you can set your pressure to low, high, and max. Max should be, in my opinion, should be reserved for canning only. I have cooked a couple of meals with this set to max pressure, and the taste of the food was awful. It tasted burnt. Now, if anybody else has this same model, the Instant Pot Max, and has attempted to cook a regular meal in there, not doing canning, but just regular cooking, and tried it on the max pressure, I would love to hear what results you had. So let me know in the comments down below if you have tried your max for cooking and cooked the food on max pressure, and how did you like it? Now we have our Instant Pot Kalua Pork cooking. It's been cooking for about 10-15 minutes. I did myself a big favor a year or so ago. I bought myself an extra Instant Pot 6-quart liner. So when this Kalua Pork comes out of here, I can immediately put my canning project into the Instant Pot Max and use it for canning. So what I'm going to do next is cut up the second pork roast. I'm going to remove most of the fat, chunk it up, and then we'll fill the jars to make our canned Kalua pork. Alrighty, so we have removed the meat from the bone. I'm going to put this bone in the freezer for the next time I make broth. It'll make nice broth. This is the fat cap that we removed. So there was quite a lot of fat, but I believe we still have enough here to fill 4 jars, I'm hoping, if I kind of loosely pack the meat. And that's always a good idea anyway. So let's go ahead and get our jars, and we'll get them into the secondary pot over here. Alrighty, so I ran out to Walmart and I had some wide mouth pints here. I prefer wide mouth for meats because it's easier to get the food out of it when you're ready to serve it. It comes out more easily than if you have a narrower mouth. So let's get these chunks of pork into our jars. So I've washed the jars with soap and water. That's why they're a little damp looking here. We're going to try to distribute this pork pretty much evenly among the jars here. We're going to need at least 1 inch or 1 1/4 inch headspace. Oh gosh, I don't think I'm going to have enough for 4 jars. Okay, well, we're going to do 3 jars. I was hoping, but I didn't have 4 jars worth of pork here. Okay, I went back to our local Stater Brothers because I didn't have enough to fill my 4 jars. And I bought another 5.5 pound roast, chunked it up. I had enough to fill these 8 jars with a little more than 1 inch headspace, maybe about 1.25 inches, and they're loosely packed. So what we're going to do to approximate the recipe, I'm going to put 1/2 teaspoon of Himalayan salt, or you can use sea salt or kosher salt. If you have the Hawaiian Alea salt, you can use that. And then I'm going to put a little less than a teaspoon of liquid smoke in each jar. And that's going to be all there is to it. We'll get that in. And then we will get the lids on the jars, and they'll be ready to put in the canner. So I think, since I have 8 jars now, I think I will probably get my Stovetop canner to can these. I don't want to wait and do 2 loads in the Instant Pot Max. That'll be a little bit quicker. Now this is pint jars. When you're raw packing meat and cooking, even if you're doing cooked meat, for pint jars, the canning time is 1 hour and 15 minutes, or 75 minutes. This is going to make us delicious pulled pork that we can use for sandwiches. We could put barbecue sauce on them if we'd like. You could cook them a traditional Hawaiian way where you cook some cabbage and serve them up with cabbage. You could put this over rice. You could do a lot of things with this. It's just a very basic recipe. Nothing too fancy, not too many ingredients, so, you know, it's more versatile. Let's see, I think every jar has its salt already. Okay, now we're going to do our teaspoon of liquid smoke. I got my teaspoon measure here. It's going to be a little hard to do this with one hand. I know, I need a tripod. Let's see, I'm going to get this camera up above here where you can have a better time to see it. Okay, that's a little better. It's sort of not a tripod, but it's a place where I can prop my phone. And we'll put a little bit less than a teaspoon in each jar. You don't want too much of the liquid smoke. It gives it too strong of a flavor. Love the smell of the liquid smoke. There are a couple of brands that I can get at my local market, and this one is one of the brands. This is Colgan liquid smoke, and the ingredients are water, natural hickory smoke flavor, vinegar, molasses, caramel color, and salt. This is another brand that's pretty good. This is my backup, Wright's liquid smoke with hickory seasoning. And same thing, ingredients are water and natural hickory smoke concentrate. So this even has less ingredients than the other. Great product. I highly recommend you should keep some on hand for when you're doing your cooking. To make sure there's no grease or food or anything on the rim. Before we put our rims and rings on these. It could interfere with your seal if you don't have the top of the rim or top of the jar nice and clean. And you can use vinegar. I usually just use water. I find that it does a fine enough job. I haven't had a problem with non-sealing lids, particularly with meat. I like to can meat. I'm a carnivore, and meat is my preferred food to keep on hand, stored up. I do a little bit of vegetable canning, but not a lot. I like to do meals in jars. This is not a meal per se, but it almost is. All you need to serve it with some rice or potatoes or whatever. You could shred these up and make some kind of pork tacos, although these don't have the same flavor profile that the carnitas recipe I gave you has. This is just a very basic, simple recipe. You could do whatever you want with these. This is more of what people consider to be ingredient canning. Now these are pint jars. They're about the right size for just myself and my husband. But if you have a family where you need a bigger size, you can also can in quarts. And if you can in quarts, the only adjustment you need to make is the time is increased to 90 minutes or an hour and a half. So you just want these finger tight. You don't want them too tight. If they're too tight, when the contents of the jar get to a high temperature, you run the risk of the contents siphoning, or even worse, your jar could break inside the canner. So you want to have it just barely on there so that it has a little bit of space to vent. Okay, and we have our 8 jars ready to go in. How simple was that? Alrighty, so I got my stovetop canner because I'm going to do the 8 jars in one load rather than do 2 separate loads in my Instant Pot Max. And I've checked the seal, the ring here, to make sure it's still good and in place. We've checked through the pinhole here to make sure we can see light on the other side. And look, we can. Okay, so that vent is open. And I have loaded up my canner with 3 quarts of water. I'm going to put all my 8 jars in here. I don't need to use my jar lifter because nothing is hot. So we're starting with cold meat, and the water is room temperature. We're going to bring everything up to temperature gradually, and then we will, once our jars are in the canner, we'll cover it, we'll seal the lid, we'll put it on kind of a medium-high heat, not very high, kind of medium-high. We'll put the lid on. So I've dropped my lid into place. I'm lining up the 2 arrows here. This is the Presto Stovetop 16 quart canner, meaning that it holds 16 quarts inside of the canner itself. Then we slide the lid into place. We've already got our heat on kind of medium-high. Now we're going to wait until a plume of steam comes through this vent hole. And once it's steaming like a locomotive, we'll time it for 10 minutes. That'll give the canner the chance to evacuate all the air that's in there so that we can make sure that the proper temperature for canning is obtained. Then once that plume of steam has been coming out for 10 minutes, we'll put the weight on. For my elevation, I use a 10-pound weight. If you're at a higher elevation, you may need a 15-pound weight. So double check your directions on the USDA website. And then once we put this weight on, we'll wait another 10-15 minutes with the heat at the same kind of medium-high. This will start to gently rock. When the pressure inside reaches more than 10 pounds, this will start to rock. And so once that rocking motion starts, we'll put the timer on for 75 minutes. When the 75 minutes is up, we will turn off the heat, and we will let this canner depressurize naturally. We're not going to remove this. We're not going to open it. We're not going to do anything to it for about an hour after the cooking process is done. Okay, our time is up on the Kalua Pork in the Instant Pot. So, as you can see, the temperature inside is 247. Doesn't really matter because we're not canning. And we're going to just let this depressurize for about half an hour or so, and then we can open it. I'm going to cook some rice to go along with it, and that'll be a great dinner. This is Kalua Pork number 1. This is the one we're just cooking for dinner. We did not can it. We just plopped it in the Instant Pot to cook for 90 minutes so we can have it for dinner tonight. Totally separate from our canning project. The cans are in the canner here. We're waiting for the heat to come up to where it starts steaming through the vent here. So I got 2 projects going on here. I didn't want to confuse anybody with that. Well, I've cooked some rice. The rice cooker is finished. Looks really good. We'll leave it on keep warm. Our first Kalua pork, the dinner Kalua pork, is finished. I just took the lid off. It has been on a keep warm for 45 minutes, plus it had the initial 90 minutes of cooking, and it just flakes apart with a fork. So awesome. So we have our pork, we have our rice. I'm still waiting for the Kalua pork that's being canned for the canner to really come up to a good pressure to where the steam is rising out of the vent. We haven't reached that point yet. And just to show you the rest of my dinner, I made some green beans here. So I'm going to turn those off. They've been boiling for about a half an hour. So we are going to plate this up and have some dinner while the canner is still coming to pressure and getting ready to steam through the vent. Ooh, there it goes. It's starting to steam through the vent. Very good, but we need a really strong steam, so maybe a couple more minutes. and then it'll start steaming. Then we can start our 10-minute timer to make sure all the air is removed from the canner so that it will come up to a good temperature inside. And then after that 10 minutes, we will put our weight on. We'll wait for the weight to start rocking, and then after that, we'll set our timer for 90 minutes. So I'm going to get our dinner on the table while we're waiting for this canner to do its thing. All right, so here is our dinner. Pulled pork, rice, and vegetables. Let's eat. Okay, our 75 minutes of processing time is over. We have been rocking and rolling like this for 75 minutes. This has not stopped dancing. The hula dance for 75 minutes. If it stops, you have to start your processing time over from minute 1. You have to go back to 75 again. But luckily, I've been here babysitting my canner, and it's been rocking like this for the whole 75 minutes. So now, all we do is turn up our heat. We're going to let this depressurize naturally. This will stop rocking pretty quickly. In about 45 minutes or an hour, that pin will drop, indicating that the pressure within the canner is down to a normal level, and we'll be able to open the canner and remove our jars. So we'll come back when it's time to remove the Kalua pork. Alrighty, I've removed the weight. The pin is down, so we've let this canner sit for over an hour. And I've cracked the lid, and I'll give it another 5 minutes, and then we'll remove the jars. All right, let's see what we've got. Now for this, I will need my jar lifter because these are pretty warm still. Pretty hot. They look nice. We did not have much, if any, siphoning, so that's good. Looking good. Two more. So everything's looking nice. We'll let these cool overnight. In the morning, we will wash the jars, mark them. Most of these, the tabs are already down, so they've probably already sealed. They have that nice dull thumb. So yeah. Now I don't know if you noticed, this jar looks a little bit shy on the liquid. So I'm going to make sure that I use this one first. I don't even know if I'll put it on the shelf. I may put it in the refrigerator. Even if it seals, I won't feel confident because there's too much air in there. And part of the canning process is you need to have no oxygen in your jar. And with that amount of space in the jar, I'm not confident in that jar maintaining the atmosphere that you need to keep your food preserved. So we're going to eat this first, and I'll probably just refrigerate it. Better to be safe than sorry. Okay, well, in the morning we will wash these up, take off the rings, mark them, and put them away. And that Kalua pork that I made in the Instant Pot was absolutely delicious. I think it makes a difference when you have the bone in the roast. Now this is not This is canned without any bone, so I don't know if it'll have as good a flavor. Another option is you could cook your roast in the Instant Pot, a large Instant Pot, and then can it up after it's been cooked and shredded. You can also, you don't have to pack it raw. You could pack it cooked. And then if you did it that way, you'd have to add some of the broth that you cooked the meat in. So that'd be pretty easy to do as well. Okay, take care. We'll talk to you again next time.